No, no, that. You're welcome. We'll be checking some learned friends of ours
Amen. The public secretary of the PDP River.
Yeah, the gathering storm. Welcome to Rivers of Power. I'm your host, Christy Obi Indukwe, on your favorite channel, the Crystal Beam Podcast. Well, in our last episode, we set the stage for the Rivers State Local Government Election Saga. We discussed the Supreme Court's ruling that cancelled a prior attempt to hold the polls, the controversial new date, and the political ties between APC and PDP. This is what so many refer to as the Rainbow Coalition. Whatever that means, we'll get to find out. Today, we will shine a light on the most disputed part of the story, the legal reasoning behind the short notice period. Our listeners asked us to investigate a specific claim, and we've done the research. The legal arguments are much more complicated than simply ignoring the Electoral Act. The main issue is the 30-day notice period from the Rivers State Independent Electoral Commission, or RISEC. This clearly goes against the 90-day notice period required by the Electoral Act of 2022. The Supreme Court had previously invalidated the elections for that reason. So what has changed? Well, we get to find out as the program continues. The answer, as stated by those in the presidency and backed by the FCT Minister, Nyesom Wike, involves a presidential power from a 2004 amendment made by former President Olusegun Obasanjo. Wike recently announced that this amendment, which responded to a state of emergency in Plateau State, allows the president to change, amend, or even ease existing laws during a crisis or state of emergency. All this grammar, what does it actually really mean? What it means is that whenever there's a state of emergency, the conventional laws are relaxed. The president has the power to modify the laws, like the Electoral Act specifies, in this case, 90 days notice by the Rivers State Independent Electoral Commission to INEC that they want to conduct elections. But from what we gather, and it was made available to us during the last media chat of the Minister of FCT, Chief Nyesom Wike. Of course, he's a principal player in the Rivers Saga. And he made it clear, unfortunately, many people didn't know, even journalists who were present didn't know that there was such an amendment. It was made in 2004. 2004 by who? Former President Olusegun Obasanjo, during the case of the Plateau State state of emergency. And of course, it was gazetted. And what was it? That the president has the power to modify, amend, or even change whatever the laws, that were existing at the time, So that's where President Bola Ahmed Tinubu probably drew his own strength from in that order that he gave to the State Independent Electoral Commission to do what? To conduct the election within 30 days, after 30 days notice had been issued. And of course, some had argued that it's a continuation of the process started by the former chairman of RISEC. There was a former commission before they were removed after the Supreme Court gave its judgment invalidating what they did. They exercised the conduct of the local government elections. So a new board was constituted, and some say it's a continuation. But here we are, being told that it's in the Gazette, and of course the documents are already everywhere. Some persons were arguing and didn't know where to get. Of course, to get the gazetted documents of in Nigeria, you just go to National Library and make your request, and you see that is there. It's clearly stated. So it wasn't even a law made by Tinubu. It was a law made by President Olusegun Obasanjo. So that's where Tinubu actually derived his strength from. Well, let's continue. The claim is that political crisis in Rivers State, which caused the suspension of the governor and the deputy, effectively created a de facto state of emergency. Consequently, President Tinubu used presidential power to issue a gazette that legally modified the Electoral Act, reducing the required notice period from 90 days to 30 days. So you can hear that. They claim this is not a violation of the law, but a legitimate use of presidential authority to restore democratic structures and normalcy in times of crisis. What does this actually mean? Here we have a state in turmoil, a state where the Supreme Court had said there was no budget, there were no elections, and then, of course, the same Supreme Court had earlier given a judgment saying that any state that does not have validly elected lawmakers, assembly, will not receive their allocations for the local government. So of course some states had to hurriedly put up whatever they did, some just the governors of course are in charge, and they were able to come up with this election, and then they had the local government councils inaugurated, and of course they also will receive their allocation. So in the case of Rivers, well, we are hoping that the state of emergency will be relaxed after these first 6 months, since of course there's relative peace. The parties involved have reconciled, they've come to agree that we need to move the state forward beyond whatever, and of course nobody can question that. We were not even there when they started, so now they've decided to reconcile. It's all good. The important thing is the interests of the state and the masses, the people of Rivers State. So we are expecting that the governor will return, the deputy will return, and the state assembly led by Martins and Mewule will also return after the 6 months. And then people are hopeful that next month, being September, that we will have a restoration of the democratic structure. So now, what is the idea? According to those involved, there's a need to get the local government working even before the governor comes. Why? Because if the governor comes, it will take him almost a year to conduct election. Well, we'll still explore and look at the reasons they also gave why that it will not be possible for him to, conduct election immediately. And so the only way they can do that is under the sole administrator, who has been granted the powers. Don't forget that the sole administrator is just an appendage of the president. He's just an aide. He's just holding forth for the president. So the president is actually the one running the state of affairs of Rivers, and the National Assembly is replacing the state assembly. So whatever the Rear Admiral Iboket Ifbas is doing, is assumed and presumed that it is President Bola Ahmed Tinubu that is actually handling that. Like the presentation of the budget to the National Assembly, it was purely President Tinubu's business. It was not Ibas. All he did was to go and probably defend the content of the budget and all that. So what we are saying here is that they want the structure of the local government in place, so that by the time the governor and the deputy and the assembly return, it will just be business continue from where, and not to bother themselves going to conduct election that may take another year. And if that happens, of course it means that they may not be getting the allocations for local government. But that's a topic for another day, because even now I'm not sure that the states that already have elected local government chairmen are actually getting allocation directly to the local government. I think the state governors are still in charge, and then I understand that the reason is because they've not been able to capture them. And then don't forget the issue of primary schools, which is actually supposed to be the responsibility of local governments. The governors are the ones who are paying salaries, and if that is taken away from the governors and returned to the local government, some councils may be operating on zero allocation, meaning that they will only be able to pay salaries and won't be able to do any other thing. So in a bid to nip that in the bud, that's why the governors are still holding on. But whatever, we are still waiting to see how the Attorney General will navigate through this problem, because it's an order of the Supreme Court and it has to be obeyed, whatever be the roadblock. So we'll continue. Like I said, this is an important distinction. It's not about ignoring a Supreme Court ruling, but about using a different legal approach to bypass a specific part of the Electoral Act. So you see, Some people say the law is an ass. It's not meant for anyone. I mean, you can see the lady with this thing. She's blind to whatever. She doesn't know who is there, who is involved. I mean, the important thing is to, and of course, our politicians, they always have a way of navigating and all that. The law is meant for the people. I mean, it's not expected that laws will hold the people in bondage. It's expected to free the people. So there will always be a way to probably bypass the electoral as some of the conditions there, in order to solve a problem, a challenge, particularly such as we have not seen before. Actually, the case of Rivers is a little bit distinct from what we had in Plateau State. In this case, the Supreme Court spoke loudly and made it clear that there was no government in Rivers and there was no functional budget, and probably that's the reason why they are trying to get it right. Well, you don't blame those who think it's a way for one side to have upper hand, but in any case, they have agreed. And so if the governor decides that, oh, this is how we can share whatever that comes in terms of, don't forget, in the last episode we spoke about reward, loyalty and betrayal in politics. So you can see how these things are playing out again. Well, it's a constitutional chess game where one side uses a different set of rules, and the legality of those rules is now the focus of heated debate. Some state elders, Rivers elders, have written the president and they have said that this is alien to us. I mean, the conduct of the election, but after the letter was made public, we are yet to hear from them. We don't know the actions they've taken, whether they've gone to court to challenge it. But again, we understand, like when we had Barrister Achinike William Wobodo, son in the making, when he spoke to us in our last episode, he made it clear that it was already time bad for them to go to court. They could have challenged that decision 3 months ago, because the law was made sometime in March, and then became it came effect in May or so. And if you look at from that time till now, it's more than 3 months, about 5 months. So even if they go to court, they probably not achieve anything. And like I said, it depends on those. You cannot be crying more than the bereaved. The one who is hurt ought to be the one. And if he says, no, I don't want any political issues again, crisis, we need to move the state forward, so be it. Well, this leads us back to the political aspect. Nyesom Wike, at the center of the political crisis with Governor Fubara, now represents this justification. The highlights his ongoing influence and his connection with the presidency. Well, for Wike, this is a clear win, a testament to his political insight and ability to handle Nigeria's complex legal and political situation. Can anybody doubt that? Well, he's been having his way. He's been winning back to back, legally, politically and otherwise. So, and of course, he's also winning the war in FCT, restoring Abuja to its former glory, or the original glory, what it ought to be. So somehow he's also doing that. But what about Governor Sim Fubara? His silence on the issue speaks volumes. Before the reconciliation, he was a strong supporter of the electoral process and had warned against any attempts to disrupt the polls. Now, he and his team have gone quiet, sparking strong accusations that he has abandoned those who stood by him. Some of them cried out just recently that he's thrown them under the bus. But that does not seem like that's what Fubara is, doing. To him, it's the only way to peace and reconciliation. After all, he had said before, nothing is too big, too much to sacrifice for the sake of peace. And I think he's actually done that. The important thing is how he will hit the ground running to ensure that he meets up before his tenure expires. While Fubara has promised not to forsake his supporters, the situation suggests otherwise. Yeah, he spoke to them at the Simplified Secretariat. He spoke and told them that he's not going to abandon them. He's going to carry everybody along, but they should allow him to lead the process. And I think that is what is expected of followers. The followers do not really dictate to the leader. Don't forget in the last episode where we talked about political betrayal, loyalty and all what, we also talked about a situation where the leader fails serially. What happens and the people decide to move. Don't be surprised if by the time Fubara returns, some of his strong followers have decided to move on. Like I said, there's also the opposition coalition called the ADC. Some persons may also find themselves, joining that, and some may want to also return to their former party and former leadership. So, well, while Fubara has promised not to forsake his supporters, the situation suggests otherwise. The peace deal facilitated by President Tinubu seems to have come at the price of Rivers State government's autonomy, and in turn, the political fortunes of Fubara's allies. Well, before Fubara, they were already in politics. So after Fubara, they will still remain in politics. It's a matter of decision, planning where you want to and where you want to pitch your tent. Of course, everybody wants to pitch their tent with the winning side, while some are still hopeful. Don't forget, we are in the era of the renewed hope. Well, make sure that your hope is renewed by someone who knows how to turn that hope into a reality and not a fluke. So, there you have it. The Rivers State local government election is not just a struggle for grassroots power. It's a constitutional battle. Yeah, it is. I said it, what the Supreme Court had, decided. It's a clash between the Electoral Act and the president's emergency powers. Is a typical Nigerian political drama where the players continually change positions and the rules can shift by presidential gazette. Yes, there's a provision for that. So whoever knows the color of power knows how to use it, as long as it does not go against the constitution. Well, don't forget, some persons are challenging the legality of the declaration of the state of emergency in court. It's still that section of the law, section 305 of the 1999 constitution as amended, has not yet been tested by the law court. So we are going to see what the Supreme Court will say. But while that is on, the president has drawn his strength from the constitution again, and he's using that, I think, section 61 or so, if I could remember somewhere. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm trying to keep up with those who are. So that's it. Well, this is a story that needs deeper examination. That's why in our next episode, we will have a guest who can provide expert insight. We'll be joined by, first, Barrister Achinike William Wobodo, SAN in the making, political analyst and others. And then we also have Larry Pepple, who has been in Rivers State, has been around for some time in Rivers State politics. He's also a respected political analyst and a commentator. They are going to break down the legal and constitutional implications of this presidential gazette. We will investigate what this precedent means for Nigerian democracy and whether the current peace in Rivers State is sustainable. Join us next time on Rivers of Power. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and give us your thoughts. Until then, I am Media FBI Obi Christy Indukwe, and thank you for listening. God bless you.